Hi, everybody. It's JD from Exonify and LearnGeek, and I just got back from a week in San Diego, California for the ATD 23 conference. So that means two things. One, I'm very tired. And two, I am weeks behind on my email. So if I owe you a message or a reply, I apologize for my delay. But this was actually my 8th time speaking at the ATD International Conference. And I can confidently say that the event never disappoints because, first of all, I got to watch Leslie Odom Jr. sing Wait for It from Hamilton in person. So that's a thing that happened. But more important than Hamilton is that I got to meet plenty of people and swap stories with L&D pros from around the world, which more and more is an experience that I greatly appreciate as part of not just my professional life, but my personal life as well. And on top of that, we even got to raise money. So we raised $200 for the nonprofit organization Meals in the Meantime, thanks to all of the energy around my new book, The Modern Learning Ecosystem. And speaking of the modern learning ecosystem, I had the opportunity to share several of the central stories and themes from the book with a few hundred of you during one of my education sessions. And now you might have seen this on LinkedIn or social media as I shared from the event, but that was a big room. I refer to that room as the Ken Blanchard room because I always look at event schedules and I see where's Ken Blanchard, and I know that's going to be the big room. And if I'm in the Ken Blanchard room, well, then I've got some work to do to fill some seats. And I mean, it wasn't a sellout, but it was still a great turnout nonetheless. And in fact, with so many people in the room, it makes it hard during the session to address individual questions, especially when we only have 60 minutes together there. So I gave people in the room the chance to submit their questions digitally through Mentimeter as we were moving through the session. And then I committed to answering every question that was asked during the session after the event online. So that is what we're going to do right now. I'm going to answer every question that you asked during my ATD 23 session. And let's start with the most popular question, because people could upvote and downvote questions to, see what other people wanted to share. And the most popular question that was asked during the session was, what's the Arnold story? So I actually answered this one in person, but I'll give you the quick synopsis. So at the beginning of the session, we played 2 truths and a lie in order to share some information about me, set up a nice little metaphor that I was using during the event. And one of the options in 2 truths and a lie was that I once got into a physical altercation with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So what do you think? Was that truth or is that the lie? It's actually true. And by physical altercation, I mean I bumped into him very abruptly, very firmly, while walking down the steps in a store in Manhattan once. So it's true. It's just not as interesting as you want it to be. But that's the Arnold story, upvoted as the most popular question to ask during the session because I didn't give any context during 2 truths and a lie. I just said I got into a physical altercation with Arnold Schwarzenegger once and then left it at that. So thanks for the question. Next question. Where can we find the slides and the recording of this session? There's 2 answers to this question. The slides for anything that I do are always on my website at learngeek.co. In this case, learngeek.co/presentations. You can find all of my most recent presentation decks there, including the deck that I used during ATD 23. The recording of the session, slightly different answer. So the session was recorded in so much as the slides were recorded with my voice over the slides for access for anyone who has a registration for ATD 23, whether you did online or you were there in person in San Diego. You should be able to access the recorded version of the session. So again, my voice over the slide deck in the upcoming weeks. So look out for information from ATD when recorded sessions are being made available. So that's where you can find the materials from the session. Next question up, can you come in and fix my company? Now, I appreciate this question because I assume it means that the story was resonating and you'd like to see some of these ideas come to life within your organization. I obviously don't know who asked this question. So the answer is, can I come in? I can visit. I often will deliver follow-up sessions, or in some cases, people might see me speak in an event and say, hey, can you come share that story with my team, my organization? It would really help open some minds or kind of get people thinking a different way, happy to do that. So I can come in for a period of time. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me, jd@learngeek.co. Happy to discuss. Fix. Can I fix your company? Probably not, but maybe I can help you start to kickstart the transformation, start to shift some minds, start to help people kind of open their eyes to the role that learning and development can and should play within the modern workplace. So that's what I can do in that situation. So feel free again, if you ask this question or you would like to ask this question, just reach out to me and let me know how I can help. Next up, have you worked with an organization using LLMs as performance support? LLM being large language models, artificial intelligence is kind of a popular topic of conversation. It was the guaranteed sellout topic at ATD 23. So if you ran a session and in the title it said AI something or other, you were likely to get a lot of people in the room because there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of questions. I'd say a lot more questions than answers when it comes to the impact of artificial intelligence, not just in learning and development, but broadly in the workplace. So when it comes to the use of large language models, similar to ChatGPT or any of the other generative AI tools that you see emerging right now, it used as performance support. Have I seen it done effectively and with maturity? No, because we're still early in the conversation. Am I seeing a lot of organizations start to play with the idea? Absolutely. You've likely had this experience. Banks tend to be one of the most popular websites that you go to, and something pops up on your screen and says, "Hey, can I help you?" Right? You might see this on technology websites as well. A lot of those chatbot interactions are a little bit less large language model and a little bit more if this then that decision tree or kind of more of a complicated search field type of an experience. But now we're seeing those tools mature as artificial intelligence can actually have a realistic conversation and deliver the available information to you, hopefully accurately. So I think there's still a lot of questions around that particular point in terms of, AI can confidently lie, hallucinate, as it were, in a lot of cases. So we're seeing a variety of different technology companies, be it the Microsofts, the Googles of the world, even the teams that I work with, start to look at different ways that we can use this technology across the learning ecosystem. Performance support, helping people find information, get the questions they need answered more effectively, is one of the early use cases. So I expect you will see a lot of new ideas, new stories, and new tools around this space soon. It's also one of the reasons why I believe the next chapter to the book should be, and I should have the book sitting here when we talk about the book, but here's the book. It's also very prominent in the background right now. But if I were to write the next chapter of the modern learning ecosystem, which there is an open Google Doc on my computer right now with not a lot of information in it because I'm still catching up. I've talked about the email already. But the next chapter will be AI meets MLE. So how does the emergence of AI-enabled technology impact the story that I tell within the book? Because again, it's a fundamental evolution of how technology works, in my opinion, at this point. So long-winded answer for not quite yet, definitely heading in that direction in terms of the impact of AI on various layers and tactics within the learning ecosystem, including performance support. Next comment. What tech can we leverage for shared knowledge and performance support? What have you seen be really successful? Just kind of talked about that a little bit. So for those maybe you haven't read the book or weren't in the session, shared knowledge and performance support are the foundational layers of the learning ecosystem from my perspective. So how do we help people self-serve? How do we help people find information when and where they need it is shared knowledge. And then performance support is that next layer when it comes to, I need help. So how do I raise my hand? How do I proactively get help when I can't help myself in that regard? So both of those concepts are fundamentally tech aware. And in a lot of cases, to support an organization with a scale and complexity, maybe distributed employees, technology is a critical part of the story. So binders don't work unless, even if you are sitting there with the binder, finding information in a binder in a way that you can then easily, effectively, and quickly apply it on the job. We're beyond binders as a species at this point. But you don't necessarily always need a technology solution to fill in the gaps, in this case, with your learning ecosystem. So a simple example with performance support, at one point was in one of my past organizations. I just took the subject matter expert list that I used as learning and development and shared that with employees after asking the subject matter experts if I could do that. But it was just my way of saying, why do we have people in the middle of the conversation? We want to connect those who need with those who know. I'm just going to tell you who knows, and you can go directly to them via whatever mechanism or vehicle would be most helpful. Checklists is another one when it comes to kind of that boundary between shared knowledge and performance support. Maybe you've got a checklist posted above a device or above the fryer in a fast food restaurant, right? So it doesn't always have to be a digital solution per se. I've seen organizations use a wide variety of different types of tools. Around the performance support side, chat-based tools, so things like Microsoft Teams and Slack, are increasingly prominent and embedded in the work experience for a lot of employees, especially people who work in corporate roles or remote roles like myself. You may be using a chat tool on your frontline workforce, something that's embedded maybe in the mobile device, like a Zebra device that they use as part of their job. Exonify, as an example, has communication tools so people can reach out for information, quickly look up information. Knowledge bases for shared knowledge. So I'm a big proponent of wikis, the types of tools that are familiar to people that look like the technology we use every day, but allow me to find information I need for the workplace. So I can use a similar set of behaviors that I use to solve problems in everyday life and apply them in the workplace with a set of tools that are similar, but then crafted specifically to meet my needs, not just lifted from home into the workplace. That's where I think we mess up a bit when it comes to things like social technology. We assume that Facebook's popular. Let's put Facebook at work. Is that how information works at work? Is it a timeline in the workplace, or is it a more nuanced relationship that you have with the people that you work with and the information that you use to do your jobs? That would be my argument. So I don't think there's any one particular answer. I think it all comes down to looking at your workplace, the tools that you have, the resources that you have available, the experience that you want to provide to the people you're supporting, and then connecting the dots appropriately. In a lot of cases, in my experience, it's been figuring out how can we identify the behaviors and the experience we want to create, the behaviors we want people to be able to apply, and then looking at the tool set we have and saying, well, how can we rethink how we use all of the different tools we have in the ecosystem, not just the learning and development tools, because maybe your LMS isn't the right tool for this because people don't use it as part of their job. Is it the right place to put critical job information? But maybe you have Google Drive, you have SharePoint, you have a wiki, you have all of these different other types of tools that can be leveraged for enabling shared knowledge or performance support. Maybe it's using them a little bit differently, wrapping the right process and system around those tools, and maybe proving that this concept works, this framework works, and then maybe finding ways to justify investment in a better technology or technology better fits your particular situation. So this is why, as you can see, we didn't answer all of the questions in the room, because then I just start talking and this video is gonna go on for a little bit. Maybe I'll chapter the video with different questions. Let's see how fancy I get. I'm actually off right now. You need to take a vacation before or after the long conference. At least that's what I try to do, but hopefully that's helpful. Next question. For compliance training that needs to be pushed, would you lead with that and work down the framework or work bottom up? So for this one, I might need a visual aid. Now, you'd think that as someone who wrote this book, that I would know where things are in the book. I do not, because I wrote this 2 years ago at this point. But here's the framework that this person is referencing, the modern learning ecosystem framework. You can see the layers there. And at the top is push training. So that question around if the training you have to deliver, as an example, compliance training, is a requirement. So you have to deliver this specific course and it has to be completed on this specific timeline by this particular audience, something that we are familiar with as learning and development professionals, something that we're always going to have to do. How does that reality impact the framework that I talk about in the session and in the book? Because the idea behind the framework is that you actually start at the bottom when you're solving a problem and only go as far up as you have to. So if you can solve the problem with shared knowledge and performance support, put a great job aid out there, tell people how they can get help with this particular topic or process, why build a course, right? Why go further up the framework? The same idea applies when it comes to compliance training. In this case, however, you know you're going all the way to the top of the framework. So it's not a situation where you're only going to go as high in the framework as you have to solve the problem. You're going to activate pretty much the entire framework, but you still start at the bottom in order to maximize the value you're going to get out of that compliance training. So I don't know, again, where this individual works to ask the question or what topics you may be talking about, but let's just generify compliance training for a second and say that there's a reason that people have to take this course, right? Generally speaking, you don't require employees to complete training that is absolutely irrelevant. There might be a considerable chunk that is not particularly relevant to the job I do at this time, but there's something in there that's important to me or different parts of the audience. So with that in mind, when we start at the bottom of the framework where shared knowledge lives, we're going to say, well, what information from this topic, this course, are we going to want people to be able to access later? So they can look up that information. They can quickly apply something from that course. So they don't have to go back into the course to ask, what was the rule? What was I not allowed to do? In this situation, we want that information to be made available so they can find it and use it on the job. So we might strip some of that information out of the course and build a shared knowledge resource with that information, an article, checklist, what have you. Performance support. Well, what if I run into this problem, right? Let's just take anti-money laundering as one of the most popular compliance topics we all have to take. What if someone asks me to launder the money? Which is strange, right? No one really does that. But what if someone does? What if a situation comes up and I'm wondering, is this money laundering? I took that training 6 months ago when I first joined, and now there's a situation. What do I do? Well, I need to know how to raise my hand. Right? Who do I ask? Where do I go? What Slack channel do I use for this particular situation? Not saying it's not silly. I'm just being silly about this. So we need to make sure there's a performance support mechanism in place so people can get help after they take the training. Reinforcement. How do we make sure people remember the right information from the training? So let's say it's a 45-minute course. Maybe they don't need to remember 45 minutes of the information, but maybe there's certain things in there for specific roles we definitely want people to retain. Because again, there's a reason they took that training. So maybe we're going to reinforce certain elements or ask people scenario-based questions about how to tackle certain elements. If they see this situation happen, how would they solve the problem? Layer up is coaching. Well, how's the manager going to reinforce? How's the manager going to coach and make sure that people are executing their jobs according to the rules, according to whatever was in this compliance training? Now we're all the way up to the required training, the structured training side, the push training side of the story. So as you can see, we're still going to deliver the course because that's what's required to meet the compliance requirement. But at the same time, we're going to fill in the rest of the framework underneath the course to get the best value out of that experience so that people don't walk away from it saying, well, that wasn't relevant to my job. What am I supposed to do with this? We can show them that there are relevant elements with how we support the other pieces of the framework. So we still start from the bottom, work our way to the top, even in a compliance situation. So thanks for that question. Next up, I get this one a lot. Shared knowledge and performance support sound familiar. Can you give examples? I think I just gave a couple of examples as we've been talking through, but the way that I separate these two concepts is that shared knowledge is my ability to self-serve information, access information when and where I need it as part of my job. Performance support is proactive help. So I can't do this. Someone help me. Whether that's a digital solution, I say, I don't know how to execute this process in my CRM system, and I click the electronic performance support tool, and now it walks me through that process, performance support. Or if I raise my hand and someone comes over to me and says, I'm going to help you work through this problem, or I go to a Slack channel and I say, can someone help me figure out where can I find this information? That's the difference in the framework between shared knowledge and performance support. But I agree, they do sound similar, and that is why I get that question a lot. Next comment up, I already spent my expense budget for books at the conference, but I loved this session so much that I'm going to spend my personal money to buy your book. Thank you. Best comment that I received so far as part of ATD 23. So thank you again so much. I greatly appreciate all the support around the modern learning ecosystem. Thanks so much for the investment. And if you have picked up a copy at the event or otherwise, jdwroteabook.com is where you can find more information about the book. I greatly appreciate the support, and please let me know what you think about the book and if it's helpful in what you're doing to help people do their best work every day. Next comment up, this is not a question, but this individual said that I4CP has amazing case studies that I've successfully used with execs at my organization. So a great recommendation. I'm pretty sure that this ties to the part of my session where I was talking about, well, if we buy in to a modern learning mindset and the modern learning ecosystem framework and how we should be addressing learning and performance related challenges in the workplace, how do we get everyone else in the organization to also buy in to this kind of an approach and this mindset. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter what we think as learning and development. Because in a lot of cases, we are working in service of the operation or other stakeholders within the business. And the interesting part about working in learning and development is that everyone has an opinion on how we do what we do because everyone went to school. Or maybe they went to a training that one time that they really liked. So they come in with not just a preconceived notion of what learning is, they come in with a pretty long held belief structure about what education is supposed to look like. And if the solution that we provide is not what they're used to seeing, they don't know if we're delivering what we're supposed to be delivering because that's what they think our job is supposed to be. So, how do we get out of that course first mentality, that kind of formulaic approach to corporate education? That's what the story in the session and in the book is all about. So, I talked a lot about influence. So, how do we help people shift their mindset and become more open to different ways to approaching learning and performance related challenges? And one of the influencing tactics that I recommended was case studies, which is what I believe this comment is alluding to. So the idea is that showing that it's not just an idea. It's not just as the expert learning and development. Yes, I should be able to bring new ideas and you should trust me that this is a good idea because you pay me to do this. But again, in a lot of cases, people put us in a box. I'm in a box right now. That wasn't funny to anybody. But a lot of cases, people put us in a box and they think we're supposed to build courses. We're the people who build the courses. So instead of just approaching and saying, I have a better idea and you should trust me because this is what I do, in some cases, you might have to prove that this is an idea that works. So that's where a case study could be a great way to help influence people to think differently. And the thing that I urge when it comes to case studies is not just relying on case studies from businesses exactly like yours. So in a lot of cases, that might work. Let's say you're a grocer or you support a grocery business. Getting a case study from another grocery business that says, hey, look, this other company that deals with challenges that are similar to ours, an environment similar to ours, and they applied this new idea and it worked. So we should try it out. Great way to open people's minds and help them think differently because it's about the outcome. It's about the context in which we're trying to deliver that outcome. So that works out. But let's say that you can't find a case study for this particular idea from your specific industry or business that's exactly like yours. In a lot of cases, I've been successful in leveraging case studies from businesses or organizations that people respect. So again, it may not be a business exactly like yours, but it's from a company that the stakeholder you're trying to influence really likes for one reason or another. Disney comes to mind in a lot of those cases, right? So I run into a lot of businesses that say that they're leveraging insights from Disney in their business, even though they don't work in themed entertainment or the hospitality business, because different organizations have learned a lot along the way and have practices that are proven that you can apply within your business to solve similar problems, even though the context isn't exactly the same. So that's what I would urge when you're looking at potentially case studies as an influencing tactic. And there's an entire chapter in here about influence. That's why it was in the session. Think a little bit more broadly than just it has to be exactly like you. No, it could be from a business that your stakeholder respects. And that's why understanding your stakeholder and having that relationship is important. So you can pull the right information to help them think differently about the role that learning and development can play. Next question. What skills, tech, thought leaders are you really excited about right now? The best way to answer this question is simply to say, follow me. LinkedIn is a great place. So I'm JD Dillon at LinkedIn. My website's learngeek.co and exonify.com. I also have a Substack newsletter called Ecosystem. That's where I share the stuff that I'm excited about, people I think are sharing great ideas, topics that I think we should be exploring when it comes to the modern learning experience, employee experience in the workplace today. That's the best way to answer that question. Obviously, I am deep in the conversation around AI, like everybody else is, but especially as a technology provider, deep in these types of conversations, because as I said earlier, I think this is a fundamental shift in technology, not just a fad or a trend, including the application to learning and development. So this is similar to the internet. This is similar to the cloud. This is similar to mobile devices in terms of fundamentally shifting the role technology plays in our day-to-day experience, including at work. you can't help but be excited and curious and have a lot of questions and have a lot of opportunities associated to that. So that is at the center of a lot of conversations right now. But otherwise, if you follow, connect with me, I'll be constantly sharing information that I think is useful for people who do the type of work that we do. Still here? How long's it's been a bit. We're almost there. We're almost there. The next one's pretty easy. How do I get your book? jdwroteabook.com has links to all of the various vendors that sell the book. So it's available at ATD. So if you go to td.org, you can find the book there. It's available on Amazon. It's available Barnes & Noble. Walmart has it. So a variety of different vendors. If you're overseas, there are various vendors that you may be able to access the book. It's available in print as well as digitally. So if you have a Kindle, you can buy the digital version of the book. It is not available as an audiobook. I wish it was, because I would have a lot of fun telling this story verbally. And I think I could. A lot of books that are business related books or learning and development books, it would be hard to verbalize. If there's a lot of diagrams, a lot of practice exercises, things like that would be hard to do. But this is very much a storytelling narrative in the book with a lot of examples and ideas and tactics and things like that wrapped around the stories. So I think I could have fun with an audiobook. So ATD. Second edition. It is not translated as well. It's only available in English. It will not be translated to my understanding. That's where the book is, jdwroteabook.com. Next one up. Can you provide some specific examples of persistent organizational agility? I work for a tech company and we face constant change on our TD team. So persistent organizational agility relates to one of the tenets of the modern learning mindset that I talked about within the session. So the idea of, well, what should learning look like? What's the mindset that we need to adopt as learning and development in order to keep pace with change and deliver value within our workplaces? And then what's the mindset, similarly, that we need to help others within the organization adopt? So how, as a business, as a company, as a team, do we think about the role of learning as part of people's jobs every day? So there's 6 tenets in the modern learning mindset. I won't spoil that for you because it's in the deck. If you get the deck, it's also heavily outlined in the book. But one of those is that the purpose or outcome of a modern learning mindset and the modern learning framework or ecosystem framework is to enable persistent organizational agility. So the idea is that we're helping the organization be ready to deal with whatever happens next, whatever the next priority will be, right? Because tomorrow, it may be a safety-related challenge that you have in the workplace, something related to keeping the employees and customers safe. And then hopefully you're able to address that challenge. And then a couple of weeks or months later, maybe there's a new product, maybe there's a new regulatory change, maybe there's an economic shift. So many things happening. And as this person alludes to, constantly facing change on our team. So the idea behind the story that I tell is that it's up to learning and development to make a shift from a programmatic approach to learning and development. We're constantly building programs, right? Not just courses, but courses are part of a programmatic approach. There's a start and a stop, right? We're building solutions in a box per se. And every time there's a new problem, we put a new box together. And then that problem's over, we put the box on the shelf. We build another box. And then we start to realize a lot of boxes on the shelves over there. Those boxes don't get pulled off the shelf very often. We're constantly chasing with our traditional tactics in that regard because we're constantly facing change. So instead of building solutions in a box, we're still going to build programs and courses and materials and videos and e-learning and all that stuff. But instead, we should focus at building a system of learning so that we've got tools and tactics and channels in place so that whatever the next priority, next change is, we can use those tools, those systems, those channels to help people develop the next set of knowledge and skill they're going to need as the business changes around them. So that's what the idea of enabling a more agile organization means, is instead of making it about programs, we make it about systems and channels and networks so that there's always a place we can put the information. And people know what learning is supposed to be here. They know where to go. They know I use this tool because this is where the information is. If I need to rapidly look something up, there's a new process that's coming down. I know where that's going to be. I know how I'm going to practice. I know how I'm going to have training delivered to me. I know what the experience is going to be like. And the experience doesn't necessarily shift. You know, there are going to be some programs that are more rigorous than others. Some experiences, we're going to go through a lot more hands-on work. In some other cases, it's going to be more digital work. That's always going to be true. But there's a consistent system of work around me that I can leverage as an employee to deal with whatever that next change is. So that's what the idea of persistent organizational agility means. In terms of specific examples, it could be, again, having that dedicated knowledge resource that I go to. It could be having a reliable place I go to raise my hand. It could be having reliable practice exercises. So again, it's so that every time the priority or topic changes, the mechanisms aren't changing too, right? We're reusing the same tools, the same channels every time, so that, maybe today I'm working through practice exercises and scenarios, helping me sell the new product. Next week, next month, I'm working through practice situations that are helping me with the new compliance requirement. The experience is similar. The content, the topic changes out, but I'm having a similar, consistent experience of learning and support as an employee. Make sense? Maybe a little bit. Getting tired. Already tired. Getting tired. Couple more. I think we've got 2 more questions. Next one up. Where can you point me for best practices on curation? Feels like the Wild West in my organization. Don't I know it? When it comes to shared knowledge, making sure people are not just putting information in the same place, but building information in a way where it can be consistently used by employees, right? Where I, as one employee, understand how to use all of this information that's coming from different stakeholders and different subject matter experts from across my business. Believe me, the Wild West feeling is a challenge that I run into in most organizations. So very few organizations really have this handled. A lot are getting a lot better at it, especially as technology evolves around this. But again, it's not a technology problem. It's a behavior problem. It's a process problem. Technology can help you solve that. But if you have great tech and people aren't committed to sharing information in a way that people can use it as part of their job, the problem doesn't get solved, no matter how big or small the business may be. Because I've seen the same problem in a 300-person company that I've seen a 300,000-person company. So it's about embedding those systems, those processes, that curation within your organization. So one of the best practices that I always recommend is that curation doesn't happen if you don't have a human being behind it. So we can say all day that we've got great technology and we want sharing, social engagement to be part of everyone's job. Great. Who's going to make sure that happens? Right? Who's behind the scenes making sure that the system stays intact, that the technology is the right fit for what we need today, and helping evolve those systems and those tools as the business changes, right? Because if you're a 300-person company today and you're planning to be a 2,000-person company in a couple of years, your systems and your tools and your processes have to evolve as the business evolves, as the way work is done changes. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of having a role called a curator within every business. And that curator is not necessarily a learning and development job. I see it as an operational position that works across the business, that touches learning and development, HR, operations, and compliance. And as a person who sits behind the scenes, they don't build all the content, but they help proliferate the idea of curation and the right behaviors and processes associated with that across the organization. So they're a cross-functional, love that word, cross-functional type of a role. That's what I think is essential to making curation and shared knowledge work, is the investment in having a person. Maybe it's not just a person, it's a team. You might have a knowledge management team already, but they're really behind the scenes making sure all of this works. Beyond that, one of the places I would point you to, if you're interested in curation practices, both seeing them happen and information associated to it, follow Mike Taylor. So search for Mike Taylor on LinkedIn. I believe he's also still on Twitter. Mike T on Twitter. One of the best curators in the biz. So check out Mike Taylor's information. And if you can't find him, reach out to me. I can point you towards Mike Taylor. Last question that we have today. In the book, you talk about taking L&D out of the equation, connecting people who know with those who need. Doesn't that make us seem expendable? Yes. I firmly believe that my job as a learning and development professional is to eliminate my job as a learning and development professional. But I'm still here. But I believe if you don't sit back, and this is true of any job, not just learning and development, but if you don't sit back and ask yourself, as the world of work changes, what role do I need to play? Where do I need to be positioned? Where can I deliver the most value before that transformation, that evolution makes yourself expendable? I don't think you're doing the job correctly. So I do believe, especially in the age that we're in now with the types of tools that are, as technology evolves, the types of tools that are coming out, especially around things like generative AI, it is fundamentally shifting the value proposition of the learning and development function. So I think it's short-sighted of us to just sit there and say, well, how can I do my existing job better through AI, as an example? No, it's how does my job fundamentally change as a result of this technology? And an example being around that connecting those who need with those who know is I'm more excited about handing these types of tools to subject matter experts than I am about learning and development professionals. Because imagine if you can take an AI capable tool that is not just any generative AI, but it's a tool that we help develop. It's a tool that we train. It's a tool that we show what is good in terms of the way information needs to be shared within this organization to help people be successful. And then we hand that tool to all of our subject matter experts and all of our champions and potentially all of our employees so that they can share what they know, but in a way that's more beneficial to the overall organization. So maybe the subject matter expert can build their own assessment, but it's built in a way that's instructionally sound, that's using our principles and our understanding of learning science and our understanding of instructional design. But we hand that to other people. And now they, it gets us out of the middle and they can build great information that maybe can be deployed directly to employees, or maybe it just is information they can build that they still need our help deploying that information to the people who need that information. So it changes the equation when it comes to the role that we play. So it's not about making learning and development expendable. It's about changing the role that we play. I often say that as L&D professionals, we are not Batman, right? We're not the hero. We're Alfred. We're the guy in the chair. We're the one who's building heroes, who's making sure they have the support they need, the tools they need, the technology, the information they need to do their best work, to do their best Batman. That's the role that we play. And I just think that the nature of that role, how we execute on that role, is evolving constantly. Right now, it's evolving a little bit quicker than maybe it's evolved over the last couple of years. But it also evolved when the internet happened, when e-learning happened, when mobile devices happened, when social technology happened, right? So it's the next evolution in the role that learning and development needs to play. And I think more and more it's about us making sure that the channels are in place, the mechanisms are in place, the tools and the tactics and the processes are in place so other people can leverage those tools to help one another do their jobs effectively. Quick story. I know. How long have we been here? Quick story to wrap things up. 38 minutes in. Again, it was a 60-minute session. This is why I do the post Q&A. In one of my former roles, I oversaw learning technology for contact center operations. So there are contact centers across the domestic US, some people working from home, some people working in offices. And my biggest goal as I walked into that job was getting myself out of the middle because of how quickly things changed and how slow I was to react to those changes because I was only one team and I only had so much time and so many resources. So I couldn't address all the problems and all the questions that were out there. I had to prioritize, which means a lot of things went unserviced. A lot of people didn't get the help they needed because there's only so much I could do. So how do I get myself out of the middle where I'm only there when you absolutely need my capabilities, right? My unique skill set, my instructional design skills, my team's skills. I want my resources to go at the big complex situations where you need my team in place. But for everything else, I want to get out of the middle and connect people. So that was my goal. So as part of that strategy, we implemented a shared knowledge practice. We implemented a wiki. And in the beginning of that wiki, my team built pretty much all the content. We hadn't activated all of our champions and subject matter experts yet. So we started out with content we built, and we played the role of community manager. So there's someone from my team sitting in the background during operating hours. When people came into the wiki and asked questions, we didn't necessarily answer the questions. We made sure they got answered because that was key to bringing people back, to making it a reliable, trustworthy, timely experience, was that when people came in and asked a question, they always got an answer that they could use. Then we took the information from the question and answer, used it to improve the information so people didn't have to answer that or ask that question again. The information was there. They could find it from a shared knowledge perspective. One day, I'm sitting in my office in the contact center, watching the timeline inside the wiki. So the feed of what's happening as new information is added, people ask questions and add comments and they get answered. I can see what's happening. And I left it on one of my monitors just to make sure the machine was running as it should. And one day I see a contact center agent in Phoenix ask a question. And there was an unknown SLA, a service level agreement that my team had, where internally we knew how fast we needed to get people answers to make the experience reliable for everybody. So that's what I'm used to seeing, is that someone from the operation asks a question, and someone that I know is going to show up within a couple of minutes, either answer the question or call out a subject matter expert to bring them in to the conversation to make sure the question gets answered. So I'm watching the feed. And within a minute of the person in Phoenix asking that question, a person in Orlando, who I don't know, answers the question. And it was right. And that was the moment. I might have cried a little bit at my desk that day. But that was the moment where we as learning and development had connected the person who needed information with the person who knew the information without us having to be in the middle. And the trick was those two people didn't know one another. They didn't know they existed, right? They didn't necessarily know who had this information, but they leveraged the channel we put in place to find that information, and we didn't have to do anything. So I took a screenshot of that moment and sent it to my boss with 2 words. So it was just in the email. It was a screenshot of that exchange with the comment, "It's working." And that was the moment we knew that the framework that we talked about here, that kind of shared knowledge, performance support foundation, was going to change the way that we approached helping people do their best work every day in that contact center. So that's my story. Didn't make us expendable. It just changed how we did our job and how we connected people with the right information. And that is our last question from ATD 23. So if you're still here, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this virtual asynchronous question and answer experience. Thanks to everyone who stopped by my sessions at ATD 23, everyone who stopped by the Exonify booth to chat and have a great conversation about enabling the frontline workforce, everyone who dropped by my book signing at the ATD store and had me sign a book. Again, extremely humbled by that experience, and everyone who just took a couple of minutes in the halls in San Diego to swap stories and share what you're doing to help people do their best work every day, especially during a very hectic, very busy, but very rewarding conference experience. So again, to wrap up here today, if you want to check out what I talked about during the session that facilitated this question and answer experience, head over to learngeek.co/presentations. That's where you can get the slide deck for AT23, as well as all the other events that I speak at. Check that out as well. And then again, if you're interested in learning more about the modern learning ecosystem, the book, head over to jdwroteabook.com. That's where you can find all of the information about the book. So again, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Thanks for all of your great questions. I hope to see you at another event in the near future. And until next time, be well, everybody. Bye now.